Okay, sweet. All right. Hey, everybody. Hi. Well, this is my first talk, and I have my friend Ahmed here to thank for this. He kind of just, told me, "Do you want to talk to a room full of developers about this?" And I was like, "Oh, it's like you times 50." It's just a bunch of, it's a lot of guys, that like code and code. That's about it. But okay, so I'm a designer / freelancer for a company. Well, actually, let's pull up about me. So I was born in the United States. I was raised in Mexico, though. I was raised up until high school. The reason I speak English is because I learned from the Muppets. I'm not kidding. I love the Muppets, and I also love Sesame Street and Big Bird and all this other stuff that KPBS pulled out. I hate Mexican television with a passion. I hate novellas, and I love the Muppets, and that's the reason why I have a semi-accent, maybe. Okay, started a career in graphic design after switching majors 3 times. So I started as pre-med. I saw that I would still be in school technically, like 31 maybe, bald at this point. I switched over to English, realized that Tolkien was great, but I just wasn't gonna make money at all, just writing books. And one of my good friends told me, you like drawing comics, you like being creative, why don't you become a designer? All right, so right when you get to the path of in SDSU, you have to choose either to go to liberal arts, or not liberal arts, sorry, just art in general, like sculpture and painting and everything, or you can just become a designer. That's the only thing that's offered. One of my good teachers, I forgot her name, but she was awesome. She literally told me, "You're not an artist anymore, you're a professional." And that's when you find the distinction between, I have to do this for money, not for pleasure anymore. And at the same time, I do like what I do. It's just that a lot of times you have to put yourself on a higher pedestal when it comes to respecting yourself, and that's a professional. Okay, I've had a variety of different jobs. I started as an intern at the Reuben H. Fleet Science Center in Balboa Park. I did an internship for 8 months for free. So I had to find ways to get to Balboa Park because I lived in San Isidro at the time. So it's about 20 to 30 minutes, and a trolley ride's about an hour and a half. I read a lot of books, read most of Lord of the Rings. Well, it was interesting because you see all those giant banners outside of the museum sometimes. I designed those. And then a lot of the stuff for the children's museums, a lot of the graphics in there were, they were awesome. It was awesome to work with kids, so that was great. After that, I became another intern again, a paid internship this time at Evo Nexus, working as a creative designer. It was actually pretty awesome. I worked for Evo Nexus. Anybody familiar with Evo Nexus here? Okay, awesome. All right, so yeah, I worked with a lot of companies there. That's pretty much when I got my start. Ahmed found me amongst the rubble. I was literally working as a print designer there, and it was great, but I wasn't getting much experience in anywhere else because when you come out of SDSU, the program is so old-fashioned that you literally just become a print designer. That's essentially what you are. And that puts you at a very big disadvantage when you come out of college. Most people can't get a job because you focus so much time on making these pretty portfolios and posters and all this fun stuff, but you realize that everybody's moving on to web and mobile. And by the time my 5 years were up at SDSU, I did 5, if not 4. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For a while I dabbled in film and it didn't work out. That's kind of why. But when I got out, I realized that I was already far behind, and at the time, I didn't really, iPhone and Android and all that stuff didn't really appeal to me. But then Ahmed found me. He's like, "Can you design for mobile apps?" I sure can, and it's a blatant lie, but I got into it. It was pretty awesome. After that, I started working with a lot of the startups that I had at Evo Nexus, and it was a variety of different. That's when I got most of my experience because I saw large startups crash and crumble. I saw a lot of small startups make it big and, make 18, 20, 30 million rounds, And at the same time, what I liked about it is that I was behind some of the core stuff that they did. Some of them moved on, some of them have sold the company. So like I said, my work is just kind of scattered everywhere. Okay, and right now I work at classy.org. So I'm a visual designer. I focus on the social media aspects of it. So I still do freelance on the side as well, but classy.org is a CRM for nonprofits. So it's focused solely on nonprofits. So if you have a nonprofit and you want to get known, Classy pretty much it gives you not only the tools, but it also gives you the guides and everything else you need to succeed as a nonprofit. Because a lot of nonprofits, they have a horrible website. We teach how to make a better website. At the same time, our CRM is robust in event ticketing and platform and all that stuff. I'm sorry, I'm giving a commercial right now, but it was literally, I had 2 weeks of sales and just like drilling into my head. but yeah, and that's kind of my life story. All right, UX and UI and why. So how many people here are familiar with UX and UI? How many of you guys heard it 5 years before right now? Okay, awesome. All right. So when I first got out of San Diego State, UX and UI I didn't understand what they were. And until I started working with Ahmed and started hitting the mobile field, I didn't really perceive it as something important. A graphic designer is essentially a UX and UI designer. However, that is not what we were called when we were in school. UX and UI, my teachers had no idea what that meant. And so when you get out of school, you essentially realize that this is a buzzword in many ways. The reason I tell you this is because I worked at Evo Nexus, and my title for my LinkedIn profile was creative designer. I made the bold choice of changing my title from that to UI UX designer. Boom, like that, every single day, recruiters calling me, Nate. It seriously was the word. That was it. It didn't matter experience, it just mattered the fact that you had that word up in there. And that's essentially, it's kind of sad. I mean, really, like most of my friends that still don't have a job, voice themselves as visual designers or creative designers, and that doesn't really account for anything, unless you're this, which essentially you are. You just you just don't know it yet. Okay, so on to UX and UI. So UI makes things look beautiful yet practical. That's essentially what UI is. UI is the interface, the GUI, and how we experience everything. And most of the time we see, considering how fast we're moving with web, it's a lot easier to see good design than bad. But there are still some pretty horrible examples. Like I said, I won't call any names, but I know a few friends that are developers that are not very design savvy. That's not their fault. And then what the UX portion of this is, UX makes people think it's practical and logical. So that's pretty much what you're trying to do. This is a list of things that a UX designer does. If you can't see, field research, face-to-face interviewing, creating user tests, product design, feature writing, graphic interaction design, prototyping, creating personas. That's essentially a UX designer. A UI designer is over here. Everything's faded out so you can see kind of, a UX designer sometimes isn't as respected as a UI designer. The reason why is because they're essentially two different mindsets, and you have to be in. That's hard because I think I'm a better UI designer than I am a UX designer. But at the same time, I've worked with enough people that I think, what's up, man? How you doing, brother? Yeah. That I can actually say, I have a little bit of experience. So a lot of the stuff here you will probably never heard of. The biggest one for me that I realized is that there you go. The goal of UX. The goal of UX is adapt and change a user behavior. So a lot of the times what we focus on as designers is we have to empathize with the user, but at the same time we have to consider the fact that we're the one trying to set the trends. And that's the biggest thing is we we get feedback from our app, yes, some of the bigger names and that we have currently in mobile is Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, Google, all those guys. Those guys test their stuff day in, day out, and they do betas and everything else. And that's the reason why they're still on top, and that's the reason why we still use them every day, because their stuff essentially works on the human side. If you think of Instagram, think of how easy that thing is. Instagram essentially it's using your photo application to literally take a picture and add a filter on it. That was essentially that's the core way that Instagram worked, and it succeeded somehow. So the goal of UX also is to take a humanistic approach, personas, A/B testing, etc. So when I mean personas is that and I think maybe and developers do this, you create essentially a user profile based on a lot of case studies. So you take like 50,000 or 100,000 people, and then you kind of marginalize them and then divide them up into small groups, and then from there you create characteristics of every single one of them. Like this person, likes video games and everything else. Therefore this person will like this. So you create personas, obviously A/B testing that you guys are familiar with, and a variety of the stuff that we saw on the previous page. So that's essentially what UX design does in a small way. And then the other thing is make user not feel the designer's hand. So yes, we are meant to adapt and change user behavior, but we're not here to force people to do that. So it's a gradual change. So if you notice a lot of the stuff that we've seen since the advent of the iPhone, we've slowly been trained to change our behavior, the way we see things. So even with the change, I think I forgot which version was, where they changed the mouse scrolling. It was no longer the way that it used to be. You had to do it the way that the iPhone flows for the most part. That's an example of user behavior. At first I hated it. This guy turned it off. So what I'm saying is that you get used to it and eventually you adapt. Unless you don't want to, then it's not for everybody. But like I said, that's why we have personas. Everybody has something that they like. Therefore, iPhone caters to all. Okay, so understanding the product. So on the developer side, when you want to create something, this is how you, kind of with a UX mindset, you approach things. So understanding the product at a high level. So what does that mean? And I'm sure you guys can guess. Is essentially seeing what the product does. The purpose of the product is stripped down to the core functionality. So a lot of the times we want to create all these fun features on a application, but we haven't even figured out how to solve A to B. So the thing is, what you want to focus on when you create an app, you're trying to fix a problem. You're trying to make somebody's life easier. So essentially, that's what you're trying to do. You're not trying to complicate things by adding more features. That's what I was mentioning. Instagram. It's such an easy thing to do. You literally did the image, the filter, and then you did the social aspect of it, and that was it. And now Instagram does other things, like it does the chats. It has chat functionality a little bit, and does video. People still don't give a crap about video. I see rarely 5 videos a day, an entire feed. That's why Vine was created, for the most part, and people still use Instagram for the most part. Vine is nowhere to be seen in any huge social circle. Vine is kind of weird, but All right, and then after that, after you figure out the problem that you're trying to solve, then you can start adding layers. And the best companies started with core functionality. I was telling you. So Google did it. Facebook has done it. Every single one of them. So Facebook, the only thing that, like I said, that we had to adapt, for example, was Facebook created their chat functionality, their social aspect, and then they created a secondary app to actually do texting for the messenger. They separated the core app and created a separate messaging app. That's kind of weird, but people have mostly just gotten used to it. For them, it's kind of weird that you just press messaging app and then it just transfers you to the other app. It's kind of weird, but you get used to it. Okay. This is my methodology when I actually approach a product or design from a user experience plan. Observe people, user design. Observe people. Not what's coming out of their mouth, but what they're actually doing with their hands. So essentially you develop your product, you have a user interface per se, you give them the phone and you tell them use it. And then you see what they do. And they can tell you, I don't like this color or whatever. I don't care about the color. Just use the damn thing. See what happens. And you'll figure out that people tend to do certain things. So one of the things that I learned, and it's funny because a lot of this stuff was actually provided by an article that I read, was actually really good. The guy was an amazing, user experience designer, user interface designer, and he would do exactly just that. Just give him the phone and just test out the app. So what would happen is if people would just do everything wrong, whatever he did, they wouldn't do. Essentially, he created an outline of what he wanted people to do, like press this corner here. They wouldn't do it. He wouldn't tell them anything. That's the thing. You exactly. Professional feedback is sometimes detrimental. So that's the second point is, when you are in a room full of designers or a room full of developers and you're showing your app to each other and that's all you're doing and you think you're the best things in the world, you show it to real people, they're not going to get it. That's the thing. Sometimes you'll hit it, it'll be awesome, but most of the time people don't understand what you guys are thinking. It's just you and your friends. It's just you and your designer friends, your developer. That's about it. And that's where you run into problems. You start, like I said, you shouldn't, that's my next point, you should become objective to your design. So also, like I said, designers have egos, developers have egos, everybody has an ego. And the biggest thing you can do, the biggest problem you can do is actually just attach yourself to your design and not be willing to change it just because it's not working. So you can have the most beautiful GUI, but it still works like crap. Empathize with your user. So I was telling you from the first point, observe your user, empathize. Take feedback with a grain of salt sometimes, but at the same time, if it makes sense, change it. If it's something that's wrong with the core functionality, then you're gonna want to change it. If it's something like I don't like this color, you said that, but if 85 people didn't say anything, I think we're fine. It's just that small gap. And then the last one is design for the worst case scenario. And this one I'll bring it up in my next, following I guess the next slides. So a lot of the times when we design an application, we design it with the best case scenario in mind. So, this is how users are going to use the phone. They're going to have a great time and everything else. But what happens when everything goes wrong? Like, do you have enough ways for the user to actually find their way back to to the main part, to the home page of the app or whatever, or the web page? Like, this is essentially going to be taken to the extreme in the next slides. Details. The devil wasn't lying. Sorry. So I was trying to get cute with that. Okay. So good practices for user experience. Thumb patterns. So if you notice, I have an iPhone 6 Plus as well. The iPhone 6 Plus, when Steve Jobs, I guess, passed away, the iPhone, was it the 5 that was actually about to come out, or already was out? 4S. The 4S, okay. So the 5 essentially was the one that followed the golden ratio for a lot of people. So if you hold the iPhone 5, it's perfect. It fits well in your hand. You can reach every button. And a lot of people said it was probably one of the best designed phones. It had a great metal case. Yeah, I have the iPhone 6 Plus because it's huge, and it's, I can watch movies all day. I don't have a TV, so that's what I use mostly. The problem with the iPhone 6 Plus, it was so big, you had to double tap this to bring the screen down, and that I've dropped this phone multiple times because you just can't one-hand the thing. You can't juggle it. So that's the problem with this phone and the 6S, the regular 6S, as these phones are too big, and like I said, we've learned to adapt. Like I said, Apple designed this little nice feature where you double tap and this thing comes down. You can reach everything else, but at the cost of making a bigger phone. Like I said, the only way that Apple's going to compete in the market was if they made a bigger phone so people could like it, and so far so good. I think the new iPhone just broke record, 13 million. Something like that. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I'm saying. So it was the camera. I know.
Yeah, 3,000 per minute.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's some patterns. So typeface size. So a lot of times when you design an application, and it's multiple applications, the icons are small, but the text is even smaller. And you're trying to fit a lot into a small space. Considering the fact that most people have enormous phones now, so you should be fine. But sometimes when you create a typeface that's so small, and this is kind of blurry, but even iPhone, like I said, even though I love iPhone in many ways, sometimes there's maybe it's because I'm using the beta right now, but you guys have seen the little on the corner where it says back to something, and it's so tiny that if you miss that, you're screwed. That's what I'm saying. So maybe it's because of the beta, but that's what I think. Tiny text, if it's not going to fit, just push it somewhere else. Just scroll to the bottom. Like I said, most people are used to scrolling nowadays. It's not that hard. Okay, swipe actions. So that's where I talk about the innovation part of it. Most stuff with iOS is pretty standard and straightforward. You have the typical swipe patterns you're used to for the most part. Some applications try to break that. Like that was one of the first things when I noticed. You guys ever use Snapchat? Anybody? Snapchat? Okay, sweet. All right, so Snapchat, it was kind of interesting for me when I first opened it because in order for me to there was no real tab, underneath here. There was no tabbing for you to go between your previous messages. You can't see them anymore, obviously, because it's Snapchat. But the way to reply to the user, you had to slide to the left. You had to find the person you had on your list and then slide to the left, and then you would be open up to the reply section. It was just kind of weird for me because I'm usually, I don't know, I feel that sliding to the right would make more sense to me. But like I said, this is kind of more of a personal choice. But that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you try to add interactions to your application that won't make sense to people. And that's where you run into problems as well. Like if you're trying to be innovative, I know this point was raised, I think, on the meetup page. I think it was, how can you create something that will differentiate itself from everything else, but not screw it up and and still be not just part of the the rest of the group, and that's hard to do nowadays, and that's a hard question because you can there's a lot of apps that have these breaking features that essentially kind of are more gimmicky than anything else. Like I said, I think the key to actually have a good application is just have really good core functionality, and for the most part have a kick-ass marketing team. That's actually really that's kind of there's a lot of companies here in San Diego that they don't have the recognition that you would see in the Valley. Like if somebody was in the Valley and they literally met with a VC and they told me, your app is awesome, I'm going to push you through all my channels, get you as much money as you need, get you the funding, get you the marketing, and bam, that's it. Whereas in San Diego, somebody could have the same idea or even better idea, not get anything for it. That's what I'm saying. Also, location was very important in that case, but that's what I mean. Sometimes just you have the resources to do it. When we go to the Q&A, I'll probably see if we can develop a better answer to that. And then we have the indoor-outdoor contrast. And this is another one of just good housekeeping rules, is that when you design your application, make sure you're designing also for sunlight. Most people are on the go. Most desktop stuff, you're going to see it indoors. So if you go on your laptop, you're going to probably look at your laptop indoors, like you're doing right now or anybody else. But if you're outside, you're looking at a phone in the sunlight. And sometimes you get a nasty glare, And there's applications that I can't even look at. There's some people that actually are good, like Spotify has really good contrast because it's dark, but a few applications just don't make, you just can't see anything in the glare. I'm not saying to design specifically for that, but keep that in mind when you're designing an actual application, that it's actually visible in the sunlight to some degree, you know. Okay, emotional connection. So that's another reason why applications work. And I used this case. I used Nike. They have the Nike Plus, application. A few other ones. I didn't put it up here, but I think this is more geared towards web in this part. But at the same time, it also applies to applications. So these are some of the things that designers care about. So this is drilled into your head when you're in school. Color theory. This is literally red goes with yellow, purple goes with green, that kind of stuff, and so on and so forth. And that literally makes or breaks an application sometimes because, like I said, sometimes when you put, a very good example is a black background, neon green text, orange green text. It's very hard on the eyes. You just can't see that. But when you put a variety of colors, like I said, that makes sense. That like some people use salmon and green and a few other. And the thing is, every single color represents something. And I know it's going to sound cheesy, but it's psychological. People that's why the biggest fast food chains are the way they are. That's why McDonald's is red and yellow. That's why Cartoon is red and yellow. Like I said, it's a theory that makes sense. People gear towards. That's why when you see an application, it's about the environment. That's why it's green and brown. That's because it's supposed to be earthy. If it's blue, that means it's probably for some, it's like Instagram or Facebook or any of those. It's social. It's nice. And it really depends. But that's color theory, and that really makes an application stand out. And that's kind of the reason why a lot of people, flock to new applications. And when you're looking through the App Store and you see something that just literally just like, it's almost making you cry at how bright it is. But at the same time, you click it and it actually looks pretty cool and everything else. Look at Snapchat again. Their little icon is it's a super pale yellow with a little white ghost in the middle. It's interesting. Like I said, I thought it was interesting and it looked nice. But that's also something when you keep in mind when you're designing the app icon for for a lot of developers, that your app icon will also be probably something that you want to focus to make sure that it stands out. And the worst thing you can probably do is put your entire logo in there. You don't want to do that. You don't want to put your logo plus your name plus everything else that you have in there. You want to put an icon. That's why Facebook has the F. Twitter has a little bird. Simple. You don't want to add everything else. You can't fit. If you want to make an app work, you have to bring it to the icon status, not logo status. Striking images. So a lot of the apps that I like, Instagram is the one that I use the most. It has a lot of good stuff. Now they have ads and everything else, but they have really good ads, considering the image quality, like I said. But if you want to talk about web, most good websites nowadays have a very large header image. About probably takes up 3/4 of the actual page. And you guys are familiar with the above the fold theory? Back in the day, everything that was above the fold was important. That's not true anymore because most people just scroll. So that's all you do. So now when you have your phone, every single website has to be responsive. Has to be. The thing is, Google drops you if you're not from the search listings. You just tank. So every website that's responsive. Hey, Steven. Every website that's responsive. It's calling him out right in the middle. That's responsive. For the most part, their header image kind of stays front and forward. And that's the first thing you see. Sometimes it's just an image of, LeBron James just about to slam dunk that right now. But, or sometimes it's just image with some text on top. But the thing is, a striking image really makes a difference sometimes when you have a web platform or even a mobile platform. It just makes a difference. So one of the cool things that I've seen in applications do is you have an app and they have a video running in the background of the actual app, like maybe the homepage. They have some, it's really faded, but you can see some guys running in the background. They have a login screen. You log in, it's like a fitness app, and that's actually pretty awesome. I'm not saying do it all the time, because sometimes it doesn't work. You got to be very subtle with these things, but that's one of the reasons why I think striking images work. And then lastly is brand loyalty. So this one is associated more with Nike, because once you develop a brand, across all channels with regards to, everything else I talked about, you can take certain liberties, kind of how Apple does, and charges a premium for everything. I think the watch costs like $80 to make. The Apple Watch costs like $80 to make. It's the most premium priced thing that they actually have in their store. Anyway, so brand loyalty. So one of the weird things I saw when I went to not even Nike, I went to Ross, and I found a Nike armband. It's not even anything. It doesn't do anything. It's just an armband you put on your arm, and it's just made out of silk. That's all it is. And the instructions in the back, all it said was, wear stripe outwards. Like literally wear this outwards. Wear the check outwards. That's the only instruction that it actually had, which is actually thought was pretty interesting. That's brand loyalty right there. And that's when you creates an emotional connection with the user. Okay, we'll have questions later. So Exhibit A. So this is kind of the example that I wanted to bring you with regards to user experience. That's why I wanted to make a note that user experience exists within the web, mobile, and then outside of that, the user experience goes across all channels. So when you guys are developing an application, maybe for a company, you have to consider the fact that this user experience is going to extend outside of that. So I'll give you an example right here. So this is a very good, actually, application. It's, you guys used Priceline before? I know Ahmed has. Anybody else? But the thing is, for Priceline is actually pretty awesome because it gets you where you need to go in 3 screens. You flick the flight, you select where you're going to go, and then you pay for your flight. And that's it. It's extremely simple. It's intuitive. I like it. You can choose a round trip on the tab. You can choose one way on the backup tab, departing flights, and once you pick it, you pick your arriving flight, and boom, you're done. And it actually has a really nice 1, 2, 3 to exactly tell you where you are in the application. You know, and it's essentially a very good example of a good app. Then you have your My Trips down here, rental cars, hotels, but everything is. This is marginalized into 3 icons. You're not thrown in with a million links to go everywhere. They generalized everything. They just compartmentalized everything, which is really nice. And then, like I said, they kept it simple. You know, you have the names for the airports, departure date, number of passengers, and then nonstop preferred. Simple stuff that you see on every. But the thing is, this is actually one of the hardest things to actually design for, because you're trying to fit as many features as possible on one screen, and they even managed to have some blue square extra. You know, they managed to save space. That's pretty much impossible now in day and age. But this is a 6S. This is how it looks on my 6 Plus. This is massive. And then, like I said, they have everything's designed. You know, it might look small right here, but it's actually pretty awesome. It's pretty clear. The only thing that I noticed that is kind of weird is they have a funnel, and I know it means filter, but seeing that funnel in 3D design is kind of weird to see it. But that's about it. And that's the example I wanted to bring was. This is the example of a good design, a well-designed app that does what it's supposed to do. However, the story I'm going to tell you was an article that I read. And it was a great article because it was a guy who was a user experience designer. And it wasn't Delta. Just to let you guys know, it wasn't Delta. But he had a trouble with an air flight. So he had the exact same thing where he went through an application that was well designed. He got to Delta. And then this is kind of what happened to him. He ended up having, I love Tom Hanks. He kind of ended up having to postpone his flight because the application only went so far. And that's kind of what I meant with user experience. So this is kind of how it went. So he had a great looking app that he did his whole application with. And then what happened was that the flights for the entire East Coast were canceled. So essentially what happened was that the application was one of the ways that you can actually cancel your flight or could they actually rebook them. So he didn't know what to, he was like, okay, I'm going to go to the app. Obviously, in most airlines, you don't have good reception for your phone. So you switch over to airplane Wi-Fi. Switched over, noticed that the servers are just completely overloaded on the application. And that's designing for the worst case scenario. So essentially this is a lot of people who had a canceled flight, who used the same application to actually book their flight. And because the servers overloaded, they couldn't just handle the volume, so they were screwed in that way. So the second way to do it is to do a toll-free call. And so he waited 45 minutes to get with a flight to get one of those people that that is in the counter, to give them a phone number, to call this toll number, and then be on the phone for another 2 hours to talk to the lady to actually figure out what's going to happen with my flight, to tell him that his flight was dropped 3 times. Then he had to rebook for the next day. So essentially, he couldn't even leave that day. So it was because of weather patterns. But the thing is, this is a user experience. This is one section of it, and this is what's happening outside of that. And then the other thing was that he had to rebook for the next day, and he had to wait 4 hours for his bag to unload that same day. The day that the flight was canceled, he had to wait 4 hours to get his bag out. Because they had already loaded on the plane, they canceled the planes, he couldn't do anything about it. So that's an example of user experience beyond web and mobile. This is your app working, and this is everything failing afterwards. So this is frustrated flyer. Obviously, I just wanted to find, and I usually don't use another rule. A good rule is never use stock photography with smiling people like this. It's horrible, but I had to use it because I couldn't find anything in time. You know, I take a picture of my friends or something. But yeah, never use Sandy. I call her Sandy. I don't know what her name is. And then never use the guy with a bad album cover. Okay. All right. So this kind of, I kind of drew it out to make sure what happened. You know, and this is kind of how the user experienced the mobile app on a good day. So user, mobile app, book a flight. How's you guys a good flight? That's as simple as it gets. And then this is kind of like cancel flight. User needs can't cancel. Mobile app gives toll-free number is busy. User goes insane and starts murderous rampage. So obviously it's an exaggeration of, you know, what could possibly happen. But, you know, this is, I mean, if you've been in for 4 hours, you know, at the airplane, plus whatever, 45 minutes, you've literally been on the plane for you've been on ground for 8 hours. You literally did your flight already. You know, just, could have walked. You know, you're really tired if you had like luggage, but. Okay, it's exhibit B through everything else. So now I'm going to give you examples of other user interface no-nos and things that I've seen and things that I've, you know, and a lot of stuff was put together with different articles that I found. Friends threw me. They knew I was talking, they couldn't make it, so they just gave me articles to read, you know, and that's pretty awesome. Okay, all right, so this is an application, you know, and you laugh, but I've seen you guys are the culprits. You guys are, you people are the ones that do this. So this is an application that, you know, probably doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, I think actually the globe spins in the the whole thing. I don't know. This looks like literally like the future, but a horrible design where all designers are dead. You know? Yeah. The machines win. Really? There you go. Okay. Ahmed would know. So this is off the top of my head. This is the 3 things that I saw. So too many features on one screen. So this is probably this is literally what you would have in the future on your wrist, you know, when your phone is literally embedded to your skin. This is what you would probably see. You know, find my gas station, call for help. But this is actually a real app. So as you can see, you can do so many things if you want to. You know, but you know, that's what my talk was about. You know, sticking to the core features. I think I have no idea what the initial core feature was of this thing to do. Ahmed, do you know?
Well, the way he makes money now is he provides like compass GPS service.
Okay, so there was a GPS server, and that compass is right there. That's where it is. Okay, so everything else kind of just got added on. But I would say, anyway, and resume navigation. There you go. These 2 major buttons do this thing. Now imagine seeing that on a small screen. Your fingers need to be extremely small to actually hit any of these buttons. But that's what I'm saying. Too many features, no sense of hierarchy, so you really don't know what you're looking at first. And then the classifications are all over the place. So essentially, he could have literally grouped some of the stuff how you saw in the airplane app, where you just have some things just grouped into small icons, and then you can see, and then you see the complexity of the app. And that's a lot of the things when you're building a complex app, you want to make sure that you can show the user the least amount of stuff possible at first, and then slowly, gradually, you know, show them the rest of the application. You don't want to scare the crap out of them. Okay. There's another app that I found. It's fun. It was fun looking at these. finding bad examples of UI is hard nowadays because a lot of stuff, most people, you know, can, you know, find their way around. But this is a calculator app, and I have no idea. I would never use this. So the menu system is confusing, obviously, and the font and color are tortured. So you have a nice diarrhea yellow, and then you have a button that says clear, and then you have a button that says clear all. You can switch from square feet to square yards, and so much functionality. You know, you can switch from tile wood to carpet. Nice. So I can see like 2 people that would use this probably in my life. I think my father's one of them. But this is it. This is you know, another horrible example. This one's a little easier on the eyes, but it still has bad hierarchy. So I think about Weight Watchers, but you can see that there's also a secondary menu with even more icons. You have literally two of these with 9. So essentially, I mean, what does it do? You know, yeah. The thing is, you can do so many things already without even logging in. That's pretty awesome. You know, the fact that you don't have to log in to do everything. You can actually pick favorites, profile, and everything else. But that's what I'm saying is you give them no hierarchy. And I don't know what the pizza does, but apparently the cheat sheet. Also, give bad iconography. Know what your icons do. This is a chef's app, which makes sense for future recipes, but this style is just. This is clip art. This is what you did when you were a kid, when you had fun, but not anymore. This is the real world. Yeah, and then obviously the menu bar is on top, which is kind of weird. Normally, the best location and this, is on the bottom. Most people are trained to use that on the bottom. If you click on the top, then you have the risk of running. This will come down. You have the risk of touching outside. You hit that icon, opens up your shopping list without logging in. All this fun stuff. Okay. And then this is actually a more toned down example. This is a lot more specific, but essentially this is what Gmail originally brought out when they redesigned their mail application. So they had gray icons on a black background on a blacker background. So essentially that was what they, and then if you can read, it says the one that's blocky in gray selects, the one that's blocky in gray archives, the one that's blocky in gray smacks. So essentially every single one of them was blocky in gray. So the optimal choice they did is they literally reversed the colors, made it gray, made it white, and it just, boom, just took off. A lot easier to see. I remember this, and this was 3 years ago. So this is the new Gmail. They learned from their mistakes. But I'm saying they pushed it, and they made it optional. So when you actually went to Gmail, if you looked at the old one, they had the button that says, "We're not changing till this date." So you can try the beta now, and you can try it, and then everything got reskinned, and you would use it. And if you hated it, you can give feedback and everything. But that's kind of how they did it. And thank God we don't have these icons anymore, because it'd be really hard to see and use. Okay. So now we come to the state of design. So this is kind of where we came from, where we're at, and where we want to be. So skeuomorphism, if you guys are familiar with it, it was essentially when we first started with iOS, everything was designed kind of to look like real stuff. So this is Amazon's old school, magazine app, and all these cool icons that you can see in the back. But everything this is like hardwood, black hardwood flooring. You got your nice little shelf here. So essentially, it was made to look like real life because everything was still so new. We didn't know what to expect, and that was an example of how user experience kind of helped. You bridge that gap between reality and virtual reality. I want to be brave and say it, but some of the old Facebook icons. But yeah, this is kind of like the way that we had, and a lot of it is ornamental. A lot of the stuff, it was clunky, it was hard to load, and it was a lot of animation and all that fun stuff, But you can start seeing the beginnings of something that we familiar with, and then all of a sudden, Microsoft pulled out this flat design style that they are kind of proud of, with the whole tile thing they did, and then the world went flat. So yeah, and then the problem is the Nike app, which is actually pretty cool, one of them, but. What happened was with flat design is even though it was beautiful to look at, a lot of the times you really, I personally like flat design a lot better than skeuomorphism. But the problem with flat was that it created this is actually a good example, but you couldn't actually see the buttons anymore. So you didn't know exactly what you were pressing. So sometimes you would look at a block, at a square block, and it's a button, and you click it, it doesn't do anything. Because you didn't know, there was no erasing or no drop shadows to showcase that difference. That's an example of good user interfaces. Is that you still want to give your users enough, even if you remodel your app from the ground up, you go from whatever you had into a full flat design. If you don't give enough callouts to your users, they're not going to figure it out. And like I said, it really depends also on who you're targeting. So if you're targeting millennials, you're actually going to have an easier time. Because millennials are pretty savvy when it comes to stuff, and a lot of them they're pretty used to a lot of the callouts. Like the menu's going to be on the top, the share button's going to be here. This is, like I said, this is the best way to navigate through an application, that sort of stuff. But flat kind of made that really hard. And the advent, I guess the new change is Google's 2.0 version that they have right now, which is material design, which is very nice to look at, and they have enough drop shadows to consider it to be, an actual thing. So. Material design is actually really good, really easy to understand. They have a huge design manual that I still have to read through because there's certain rules how you can use material design. You just can't go and do your own thing. They have a certain amount of degree to the shadow, everything else, kind of like how Apple does it. Okay, and then the reigning king of a user experience and user interface, obviously. So this is Apple's transition through what we consider the phases of skeuomorphism design. So notice this is an early Apple website. This is when the Mac Pro was still a tower, and it had 8-core Xeon workstation. But I forgot which iPhone was this. But essentially, look at the tab system we had back then. It was it was 3D. It was it had bezel. It had the shade. It had 2 levels of navigation. And like I said, a lot of it's changed, but a lot of it's kind of stayed the same. You just kind of, and this was 3 years ago. We still have that nice, gradient bezel. The iPad is now front and center. And that's the approach that Apple took. And if you notice, they changed a lot. So now the world went responsive as well. So this is when we started creating, gigantic images, and the above the fold mentality went away. So this is essentially what you see. You see the image, you want to buy the iPad, and you have images scrolling through, and you can barely see what's going to be below the fold. But that doesn't matter anymore because everybody just scrolls now. That's the reason. That's the beauty of user experience and user interface design, especially with the new mobile age. Is that you just scroll. So the above the fold mentality is gone. A lot of marketing people lost their jobs because they couldn't adapt. and this is how it looks now. Sorry, I cropped it out, but this essentially, like I said, this is what you see. You don't see any of this, and that's the beauty about iPhone, the beauty about Apple is that they are very good at trend setting. And that's kind of the reason why I bring up the Apple Store as well, is that Apple, and we're an iOS group, so it's easier to talk about this, but if you buy an Android phone, you have a Android phone and it breaks, where do you go? Well, it depends on who your carrier is. You probably can do your insurance company, but that's about it. That's you're not going to be taught on how to use do the user interface. You're not taught anything. And Apple provides you a store and then provides you a layout that actually makes sense. So you have your salesman in the front. In the middle, you have the people that register you for whatever appointment you might have. And the back is all the Geek Squad people, all the nerds that actually hang out there. And that's what I'm saying is that they created a user experience that goes outside of the actual application, outside of their software, outside of everything they created, and give you a really good experience all around. And that's another term that was brought to you, brand loyalty. You're used to it. Okay. And then bring you to the 7 sins of user experience. So this is the 7 things that, this is actually a really good article also that I read, provided by one of my friends. But 7 things you must never do. Too many features, not enough time. So that's kind of the one we saw prior, where you saw the 30 things that were going on screen right now. That's kind of one of the biggest. So if you have features on your on your phone, you want to do, remember to stick to the core functionality. What does your app want to do? And do one thing and do it well. And that's how pretty much you stand out. If that answers anybody's question, you want to do it well. So if you do that, you might succeed. And also good marketing. Okay, inconsistency. So say on one screen you have a blue background, the next screen you have a white background, the next screen you have a yellow background. You need to make sure it makes sense. That's why everything that Apple does has to make sense. Otherwise it wouldn't be Apple, right? But the thing is, Johnny Ive takes meticulous care when it comes to, and I've noticed it. Like I said, you go through through every screen, and you say, for example, you pull up the one that has the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth. The screen in the background blurs out for a second, so you can actually see what you're looking at. So the back screen won't interfere what you're looking at. That's what I'm saying. But consistency also comes down to having buttons in different places. Having links that are different colors. That stuff kills an application and kills the experience for the user. Because in one screen, you have the back button was blue, the next screen it was red. I already messed up. So that's what I'm saying. All right, what we're designing. And that's kind of goes back to the same example. You think too much about the design, and therefore it looks like crap. So essentially, sometimes you need to step back and kind of look. And I do it all the time. I'm designing for about 2 hours. I get out of my office and I do like a lap around the block, and then come back. Because sometimes you've just been staring at it too long that it doesn't make sense to you anymore. And then when you have that, and like I said, you can also use feedback from friends and designers and everything else to help you out. But most of the time, you got to make sure that you're designing an app that is practical and logical and usable. And like I said, that's kind of what we're talking about right now. Speed. If you want to add animations to your application, if you want to add all this fun stuff, don't do it. Do it if it doesn't make the speed go any slower. Make sure your app always runs smooth and efficient. Literally, that's my biggest reason why I switched between music applications. I was using Spotify. Oh, actually, I was using Spotify for a while. And I realized everything took too long to load. Like my playlist took too long to load on my application. And maybe it was because I had a different phone company. But I'm saying is that I've given up on applications because they're just too slow. And that's a big thing. Speed is a huge determining factor in how popular your app can be. Verbiage. Make sure people understand what your app does. So if you word everything kind of weird, You know, like if you say like, what do we do? Well, we do this, and you do it some developer speak. They're not gonna understand. You gotta literally hire somebody that's, you know, like dumber than you, and then just make him like say what do you gotta say. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You gotta make sure that people can understand what you're trying to get across. And last thing, well, not last thing, non-standard interactions. That's more like I said, telling about gestures that don't make sense, doing things that are too novelty that people don't understand. So you want to make sure that you ease people in. So if you want to have something that's novelty, do one of them. Don't do three. Don't try to make everything. Don't make your app spin. Don't make all this fun stuff. Just make it do one novelty thing that you're trying to accomplish. That's what Snapchat did. Snapchat did. You take a picture with text on top and you send it. That's it. That's as complicated as it got. And then they added all that other stuff. But they got the core functionality right. They got the money. They got the funding. And then now they're rich. And then help and FAQ. If your application needs overlays and needs complicated menus and an FAQ section, you're doing it wrong. If you need an FAQ section to explain your application to somebody, you're doing it wrong. Because literally an app should be pretty straightforward. You should probably be able to understand it. Just by going to the App Store and reading the summary, you should probably understand what you're trying to get to. That's it. But if you need an FAQ to make sure that you get, I mean, even TurboTax is easy to understand. I mean, I'm serious. I literally did my tax when I was sitting in a meeting for 15 minutes. It was that easy. Like they have an FAQ, I think, hidden somewhere, but it makes complete sense. Their hierarchy and their layout, it just makes like, okay, boom, 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 I'm out.
You just got interesting taxes.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, freelancing is pretty interesting, but the good thing is that the good thing about TurboTax, it's you know how it pulls in everything else. I mean, a lot of it is just fills in the blanks for you, which is why I like it. But we'll talk more right now in the FAQ. Okay, and then the case study that I kind of used and I kind of took liberties was, you know, we talked about SDIOS, our website that we currently have. So, so it was more using it because I wanted to point out some things, obviously, and like I said, if we haven't updated in a long time, it's not your fault. Some of the things that we try to get, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. 5 years is a long time, and like I said, this is how much the web has moved on, you know, from then, you know, and like I said, maybe this Craigslist hasn't moved on, and people still use it because it got its core functionality right. You have blue links. And you find what you need to do. You need to find your couch. You type in search. You get couch listings, and that's it. It works. It served its purpose. It doesn't need to look pretty. They added a map functionality, and I was crazy about it. It was awesome. You know, you can actually see where your actual person's gonna, you know, you're gonna pick up the couch. But the things that are wrong with this, or not wrong, but I said things they could probably change, is that have you guys ever clicked on this menu button before? It's insane. There's a lot of stuff going on back there. It's a lot of stuff. So what I think it was, the menu was in the right place. The thing is, the colors were, you know, are all out of place. So that's the thing. We stuck to the SDIOS colors, and we kind of put the gradient on top of this. But the back and forward buttons don't need to really exist. You can back and forward between, or they can exist, but they shouldn't exist there. They can exist because most browsers you can click back and you can get to where you need to go. Unless the site has ridiculous amount of complexity, which I hope it doesn't. You know, I only dove so deep. You don't really need these back buttons. This, obviously, the homepage, you really don't need to say homepage. You can literally just have the icon and just be the homepage. But I'll show you the example right now. This is a lot to look at. And you have 3 different tiers of letters you're looking at. And they're actually getting bigger as it's going down. Normally it'd be the other way around. You start with the big letters and you move down. So now you're doing it backwards. And like I said, you have an image here, front and center. So the first thing I look at, which is, you know, actually not a bad thing, is you look at sdios.org, which is good. You know, second thing I look at is the yellow, Apple iOS development. You completely skip all over Lansing Enthusiast and tech support, and you have this really nice, you know, reversible, you know, like shadow on the thing. And then on the right-hand side, so what the focus of this homepage should be is showcasing the next event, correct? So it's showcasing who's going to be speaking. So essentially what I'm getting at before I get to see anything is this. And maybe, like I said, maybe that's the idea. Maybe I approached it the wrong way, but this is kind of what I did. So I literally flattened the icon logo that we had, San Diego iOS group. I changed the menu icon for a typical hamburger layout icon. I added a nice image on the side. I kind of wrote what our mission statement, and then I put myself twice. But essentially, what I did is I created the upcoming meetings that are coming up, and then I gave a to-go archive button. And like I said, all the functionality is still there. It's in behind that hamburger icon. You can click down, but essentially people see this. And they see to learn more, and then you click on that, or you can just scroll down and you see these people. Everything else I didn't design because I didn't have time. But what I'm saying is that I literally I think I solved the homepage problem, at least when it comes to just, you have a nice image and it tells you who's going to be speaking. And then everything else is locked away behind that. And then you can still see who is this about, and it's the iOS and Centennial Group. And maybe when you click on that, you get the about section, you get everything else that you want to see. But essentially that's an easy way to, like I said, I fixed it with like 3 blocks. 1, 2, and then this is the 3rd one. And that's it. And like I said, you can reserve from here, and this can probably link over to Meetup, and you actually reserve from the page. But essentially, obviously this page kind of serves more of a landing page per se. But yeah, that's my solution.
Why 2 and not one bigger one?
What?
Why 2 and not one bigger one?
Well, like I said, I struggle with that too. That's another example of user experience. I could have made myself even bigger, and then added my bio and everything else. But I kind of wanted to see people see 2 of them. I don't know. That's my choice. I could have made 4 of them, but then it would have gotten weird. Just 4 times my face. But yeah, that's it.
You would realize. I mean, it's 2. It's like the last one. Is that what you? Like if you have 2 concurrent meetings, is what you're thinking.
Yeah. If you have like 2 meetings coming up.
Right.
Scroll, you might see.
Well, I think current meetup, the thing that I looked at today, it didn't have the date, it didn't have the location variety of stuff. I went looking around.
Yeah, well, this one had the location and everything else, but some of them can't have it. And Jeff was really good about sending me a location and everything. So he's a good at follow up though. Ignore the landing page, good at following up. Okay, but that's it, guys. That's all I had to say. Questions, comments, concerns?
One thing I've noticed when I go to websites is you can't control the font size.
Yeah.
So a lot of times on my iPad,
Mm-hmm.
I can't read it.
Really?
I'd like, even if I can blow it up,
Yeah.
my finger doing the page thing,
Yeah.
I will not do that.
Yeah, sometimes that really depends on the layout you're using. So like I said, most people can actually buy or use a different WordPress theme, and a lot of themes are their responsive is really good. So essentially, everything will kind of just like clutter together.
Some apps, you can get them, you can control the font size.
Yeah.
Sometimes you cannot get the font size control.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest complaints I have.
Just for websites, right? Not for mobile applications.
Yeah, Apple Insider's really good about that. They got like bigger buttons on every article.
Yeah. No, like I said, some websites have a very hard time kind of condensing everything down. The biggest one for me is CNN or any of those big news chains. They have so much stuff they're still trying to get across to people. So it's really hard. You really need to zoom in to get on that link sometimes, and that's hard. But at the same time, that's something you have to you give and take. Like the website that we had for the landing page, it was really easy to do because you have a limited amount of information you're working with, and it's very popular nowadays. The hamburger style menu or hamburger style, like websites, block. So it's really easy to to work in that space. But when you look at a news site that has so many layers of complexity, and they're trying to shove everything in your face, something happened in Iran, somebody had a baby, then you're actually it's kind of hard. Anybody else?
So what does your workflow look like? Are you using, to prototype that page, do you do that in Illustrator or Photoshop?
Okay. So normally what I do is, this one I approach it a little differently, but normally what I do, I take it to Sketch. So I sketch stuff out, and then I prototype it using Balsamiq, which is actually really awesome, because you can actually start doing user interactions and all that stuff. And then after that, I'll pass it on to Photoshop. I'll work on the mock, and then if I want to go an extra mile, I'll throw it into InVision. You guys have heard of InVision? And so it's really awesome for collaborative stuff. And currently at Classy, I use it with my developers. So I can create literally a product demo, in a matter of hours that would go through every single screen that we have for the CRM, and it works. Like I said, and you just click the links through. For mobile design, I have a variety of apps. So I use an app that mirrors what I'm designing on my phone, and then I screenshot everything that I'm designing, all the screens, and then I start prototyping them. So have you heard of POP, prototyping on paper? So I use that one. So essentially, it's really easy. You just start making the links, and then it'll just go through all your screens one by one. So you can just test how it looks. And it's actually pretty awesome. I use that for mobile design. For web, obviously, I use Balsamic and everything else out. Question?
Have you worked with mobile design or web design with ads? How many ads you have?
Well,
Excuse me, just if you don't mind repeating the question, just make it clear that.
okay. So the question was working with ads in mobile design and web design. Okay. Well, currently I'm the visual designer for my company, so I'm literally making ads all day. Literally making that's pretty much part of my job. But are you talking about you specifically, using your website to promote ads?
No, just like, let's say you have a content page, website,
Uh-huh.
and you want to throw in some Google ads to put some extra change.
Yeah. You would keep them to the sides probably. You want to keep them, like I said, the last thing you want to do is shovel more ads into your user. So never use ad overlays. I hate them with a passion. And also my biggest gripe that I had also with YouTube is sometimes you go to the page and then everything goes black and they have a video playing of some movie I don't want to see. That's just, for me, it just pisses me off. But at the same time, a lot of ads that I've seen that are tasteful have usually stuck to the sides of the website, probably at the bottom. Like I said, sometimes it's not the most ideal place, but with the way the website design is going, a lot of people tend to push them to the bottom. That's kind of what I've seen so far. Yeah. Any other question? Good? Okay, sweet. Simon?
I have a question about icons. One thing that stood out to me about that first one you had is there's way too many icons. And so peace of mind. How do you approach like too many icons? Like, this guy wants
Yeah.
home, this guy wants this.
Yeah.
Do you buy icon sets? Do you design your own? What's your
Okay.
view on how many there should be?
Okay, well, it really depends on how many, like we talked about, the features that you're trying to implement to your application. So if you look at, talk louder. You doing good? Oh, okay. So he's asking about icons in terms of, how many there should be. Is there a limit? Do I make my own? Do I buy a set of icons? So the question is, I do both. So sometimes when you run out of time and you want to plate and you want to test something, I buy icon sets, and it's actually pretty cheap sometimes. But you can buy an icon set, you can try it out, and depends on the client, they might want to get custom icons, and that's when you actually, charge them by the hour. but what I'm saying is, because it takes a while to really get a really good icon, and the example that I'll talk to you about that example later, but I prefer buying icons most of the time because, like I said, making your own icons takes a lot of time. And this day and age, most people are worried about, like I said, most people will just skip over your icons. Like, they'll look nice, but Instagram has one icon that looks different, which is the camera icon they have. But now everybody has a damn camera icon. You want to keep it to probably the amount of tabs you're going to have on the bottom. Normally, you won't go past 5. So I say 5 icons on the main menu, maybe, like on the bottom. But like I said, I'm just specifying. Some people do 3, and general rule of thumb, you don't want to go over 5. And in my mind, at least, it doesn't make sense because then you're just confusing people with just. Like I said, I've played video games as well. So whenever I see Call of Duty or any other RPG, and then you have like a million icons for everything else, like health, stamina, and everything, I get overwhelmed. It's confusing. You're trying to jump into a game and just play something, and you have to look at you have to use runes to figure out what you're trying to do. But yeah, anybody else? Oh, go ahead.
You mentioned kind of the trends in design going from skeuomorphic to flat.
Yeah.
And how the buttons lost their drop shadows and
Yeah.
all of a sudden you couldn't tell what to click. Any other trends in design happening now where you think you're just going too far or overshooting?
Overshooting.
Design or usability?
Well, one of the fun things that I think, I don't know, maybe it's here to stay. I like parallax, the parallax effect, where just an image stays constant, and then everything else kind of just moves up. Well, like I said, I think web design is kind of moving towards a better. One of the things that actually is going out of style is videos. So a lot of the times people don't watch your video anymore, and that's a video count is really hard. So right now, actually, like Classy, we just hired a video guy, and I'm gonna have a hard time, accepting the fact that his videos are actually being watched by anybody. And that was one of the big trends that we saw at the beginning of with people, especially if you had a huge nonprofit. You would have a big video front and center of some African children running away, and then you would have for 30 seconds you're watching somebody talk about how horrible their conditions are, but nobody has the time to watch that anymore. Nobody's gonna sit there for 5 minutes and just literally watch an entire video unless you're really into that stuff. You'll have a set amount of core users who will love it, but video is going to go sell. That's why I mentioned striking images versus striking videos. You want to have a good image that showcases that instead. And that's one of the trends I think is probably going to be here to stay. People just don't have time to do that anymore. Yeah. Anybody else?
Which ad blockers are you using?
Ad blockers?
You say you hate them. So.
Yeah, so essentially I turned off, there was a point where I actually turned off Flash on everything else on my browser. So essentially I had to allow the page to load, otherwise it wouldn't do it. So that's the ad blocker the thing is, the one at work actually has a pretty nice ad blocker. I don't know the name, but nothing gets through. So literally I have to ask for permission to get to some websites that are like really like animation heavy. It's not gonna go through. So literally it's just bare bones. It's not that bad. It's a good life. Yes, sir.
Question on design for the app store itself. About ideas on that, set up your screens, what screen should you pick?
Oh, okay,
If you have-
gotcha.
If you have more than two,
Okay.
how do you get that to flow?
Gotcha. So designing for the actual app store and showcasing which app screens you want to show, and okay. So essentially, you want to show the most visually striking screens because you want to get your point across. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you can make people understand the core functionality of your app at the same time. So I would probably suggest the homepage is kind of like a hit or miss because you can no one wants to stare at a login page when they're looking at a preview of your app, for the most part. So I would say no login page. I would probably say the feature page of the main core functionality that you do, and like two backup screens that you're comfortable with showing. But they have to be well designed. You want to make sure they're well designed. That's the biggest thing is that even if it's like, oh, it does so much, this is the most awesome thing in the world, people don't understand that. Like I looked at this application. It's to talk to international students to learn languages. I forgot what it was called. One of the many. But the thing is, the screens confused me even more than the actual application. I had no idea what I was getting into. It looked like I was gonna get my credit card stolen. That's what it looked like, and it looked so shady. It looked and I was bad design probably also too. But it showed me so much that I could do that it scared me, and I literally I opened an application and I said, this is my name, I want to learn Japanese, and boop, I disappeared. I never went in again because there was so much to do that I didn't know how to start. I didn't even know how to make friends in that app. It was so hard. So I kind of gave up. That's what I'm saying. It's just by looking at the screens, it scared the crap out of me because it didn't make sense to have that much functionality given to you just kind of just thrown up at you. So yeah, I would probably suggest the core functionality. Like I said, this is my methodology, stripping it down to what it does, and then obviously you can probably explain a little bit, of what you do. Anybody else? Matt?
Okay, so I have this great app idea.
Okay.
It's called Papyrus.
Okay. You bastard.
It's
Okay.
like selling papyrus.
Okay.
The background has to look like papyrus.
Okay.
The font has to be papyrus.
Okay.
What would you tell me?
Don't do it. So I would just kill the app idea before it even starts. No. If you want to make an app that has that is papyrus based, I would say it's papyrus. Probably use a elegant font that's like thin, to showcase that it's still fragile. But I would eliminate that background completely. And the idea is to use that font. There's one thing that I didn't talk about is there's a good article I should probably one day send if I can to all of you. There's literally a set of fonts you're supposed to use in both web and mobile. Yeah, and essentially it's a small amount. I think no more than 5 or 6 fonts that are readily acceptable and legible by everybody. And beyond that, everything else is just kind of print. Like this is kind of the stuff. And a lot of the times that we see a lot of fonts, they're usually headline fonts. They're usually old school fonts like Times New Roman, serif fonts. But most of the time for the web, you want to use a sans serif font. Try to keep for a sans serif. Unless you're writing a book, you want to use a serif font. You want to use Times New Roman. You want to use Calibri actually it's a sans serif. But that's what I'm saying. So you want to make sure that you stick to a sans serif font. It's very legible to read. It's very easy on the eyes. If you're writing copy on a website or mobile, you want to make sure that you don't have more than like 9 words, going across a line if you have a website. But if you're doing mobile, like I said, make sure you have legibility, no black on neon. Sorry. Anyway, anybody else? Question?
What's your opinion on push notifications and badges versus notification, like that notification track?
So what's my opinion on notifications and push notifications? Okay. I hate them. Honest to God, I hate them. They the thing is, because I don't know, this is a bad user experience, probably on my head. I don't know how to turn off the one for fantasy football. I don't play football. I don't like football per se. I like watching. I like playing it, not watching it. But I signed up for this fantasy football league, and I have no idea how to turn off the functionality for the push-up notification. So essentially, I get them every day. So every day I know a new player that got injured on my team. Every day I'm knowing I'm losing. So it's great. But that's what I'm saying is it's that for me it's a bother. Unless you like being, especially if most people are at work. Unless you're a teenager looking for something to do, it's great. It's great a way to get people riled up about something. But if you're in an office 7 days a week and your phone just going the entire time on your table, it's not great, especially if you're in a meeting. So I don't like push notifications. Every single app I turn them off that I have. The only one that I probably have on is my messages, and then maybe if I'm feeling adventurous, Facebook. That's about it. I turn everything off. I don't like them personally. Yes, sir.
Where do you find UX designers?
Where do you find them? Some of the best UX designers are actually psychologists. Weird, right? So I'm not a psychologist, but I know that a lot of UX designers think with a different part of the brain. It's gonna sound really technical, but a lot of UX designers are better psychologists, are better at dealing with human behavior. So they already have those patterns kind of ingrained with me. So I have a friend that I talk to sometimes, and she is a psychologist, and we're going through like a set of we're just talking we're asking each other questions and everything else. And then by the end of the night, she tells me that I get predictable. It's kind of like it sucks, because you're talking to somebody like that. But essentially, because you fall into a pattern, you fall into something. Okay, he's gonna ask me about this, about my day. He's gonna go, and so she kind of like analyzes that in that sense. So that's literally UX user experience. You're trying to create a pattern of human behavior and change that for the better. So kind of the way that I saw it, if you want to think of it this way. I was still born before the internet was, a thing. So essentially, I had to train I was scared of computers when I was a kid. I literally had a computer for like 3 years, and I was just like shy. I wouldn't touch it. I was so terrified of it. I don't know why. So essentially, it's like the movie. What's it called? The one where it's a big black obelisk. Space Odyssey. Yeah. Essentially, that's what I felt like. Stuffed in my jammy jams. And so I know, right? Just terrified out of a white box. So what ended up happening was that we ended up getting, all of us got trained, to use these phones, especially smartphones. None of us, and considering my nephew, who was literally born, so my nephew is, you consider this, he was born into the internet. So for him, it's always been. So for him, Wi-Fi has always existed. YouTube is always there, So he literally just is a natural. He's been using the iPad since he was 2. It took me a while to figure everything else out. So that's kind of the other point that I wanted to make, was just usability is different for different people. Millennials are a lot easier to get the hang of things a lot faster. Your older generations, my dad still can't operate his phone. My dad's hands are like just these weenie fingers are huge. So he literally, and he's like, he works construction. So when he touches his phone, and he has a 4S, he just looks like he's breaking the phone every time. And he's actually broken 3 phones in a year, because he just crushes them into a diamond. But he's a construction worker, so they're all tough, and beer spilled everywhere. Yeah.
My question is, I think I'm going to look on Craigslist or something. If I'm a developer and I've got an app and you just convinced me I need a UX designer,
yeah.
Where do I get someone tomorrow?
Gotcha. Okay. All right. You're probably going to have to go through LinkedIn or a recruiter. So the thing about UX designers is that usually they come off as UI UX designers. That's kind of the point I told you, is that I think I'm a better user interface designer than I'm a UX designer. Because even though I sometimes empathize with users, you have to put yourself in a position where you have to think like your user. And that's hard sometimes to do because you think people are stupid, right? But if you want to get a user experience designer, it's hard. A good one, especially. Like some of the best brands actually have really good ones. But if you want to get another one tomorrow, you should probably try LinkedIn or try any of the recruiting websites that exist right now. That's probably the easiest. They're not going to be walking around just like, Joe Schmo. And or do they hang out in coffee shops? Go. I'm sure they hang out in Starbucks. Go find one of these guys. I hang out there. Ahmed hangs out there. I know a few of my friends do too. Yes, sir.
How about the San Diego Association of Graphic Arts Organization? Do they have, I know they have the ability to post jobs and stuff
San Diego
like that.
Association of Graphic Arts.
Are they focused on UX, or are they just mainly traditional?
Are you talking about, what's the name of the,
It's like San Diego AIGA.
Oh, AIGA, yeah. AIGA was huge when we were in school. That was probably our only link to the outside world, because they also do the Adobe conference, which is pretty sweet.
Or do they mainly print?
They do everything. They do across the board. But for a while, when I was in school, they focused mainly on print and going to museums and all that fun stuff. But they've changed over the years. Sadly, our curriculum at school hasn't. But but yeah.
That might be a good place to play.
ICAM would be good too. And they have a set of designers they can actually give out to people.
There's there's 2 meetups in San Diego.
Yeah.
Using UX.
Yeah.
Look up on Meetup. There's one called San Diego Experience Design.
Yeah.
And then there's UX Speakeasy.
Yeah, the UX Speakeasy is the other one. That's the other big one. And yeah, they have some really good people there too. So you want to hunt user experience designers, you should probably try there. They're, like I said, it's a different breed for user experience designers because, like I was telling you, you have to think differently. And creating personas is not easy because they do a lot of research that goes unnoticed. A lot of times, most companies are hiring a UX designer and a UI designer because they could focus on their tasks individually and they're good at either of them. Instead of becoming a full stack designer, like a full stack developer, you're jack of all trades but master of none. And so you're just kind of worthless. Yes, sir.
This may be more particular to Chris. Behind here.
Yeah, yes, sir.
IoT meetup and the silent intelligence meetup, they've had UX people in our group meetings that are deeply involved in those technologies, so that's another option for you. Thank you.
No worries, of course. Any more questions or concerns, comments?
I found a website version of Papyrus.
You're killing me, man. You're killing me. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for having me today. Yeah.